When we were preparing for today's show, at the last minute, like 90 seconds ago, we totally changed everything and had a terrific meltdown as we refused to go with the flow. Welcome, everybody. I'm Scott. He's Chaffee. This is the Business Success Show. And we had a plan. Of course, Chaffee and I don't have like plans set in concrete. But what was kind of funny is as we were discussing our plan for today, his list of topics was in a different order than my list of topics. And so this caused some confusion, as you can imagine, not major confusion, but just a little bit of confusion. And then we decided to talk about
it was the same topics though, Scott. I just want to clarify. We had the same topic. It was just in a different order.
Just in a different order. So at the end of this discussion, right, Chaffee said, well, we should really discuss going with the flow this week instead of the topics that we had decided. And Chaffee, I think that that was brilliant on your part, because so often, and I'm gonna point the finger at corporate America on this, because my experience with this is way greater in corporate America than it is, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people that have their own smaller businesses, right? But when I was a manager at a major grocery chain, hey Jay, people would not go with the flow, right? Could you stay an extra 15 minutes because the checkout line is long? No, I gotta go. And maybe they had to pick up the babies at the babysitter or whatever. I mean, they had their reasons, but generally speaking, people I felt were very, very rigid.
Absolutely, Scott. And if you ever watch Star Trek, you know what the Borg always used to say: resistance is futile.
So are you saying that the flow is irresistible?
No, you know what? Here's the thing. Actually, one of my one of my heroes, icons, people that I look up to. His name's this guy, you might have heard of him. His name's Bruce Lee. Maybe you heard of him. he and one of his quotes is, "Empty your mind, be formless, be shapeless, be like water." Right? You put water in a cup, and it becomes the cup. Right? And so I love that quote, because when I think about resistance and going with the flow, there you go, water. It's like, it's like salmon swimming upstream. It's a constant battle and a struggle. And, instead of swimming upstream, if you go downstream and you go with the flow, all of a sudden your speed increases, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 times what you could normally swim. And if you're going against the flow, if you're swimming upstream, it's like instead of your normal speed, now it's like half the speed. Or sometimes, it's funny, I was in one of those endless swimming pools. And they have this little engine that, it's like this little tiny pool that you just fit in like 6 feet, and you're swimming, and like you don't move, right? It's like you're just swimming in place because you're swimming against the flow. And sometimes in life and in business, when you're fighting and when you're resisting and not going with the flow, you're either not moving, you're just going in place, or sometimes you're even being pushed backwards. And that's what, prevents people from succeeding.
And I would suggest that you get very frustrated, right?
Yes.
Because if you're going upstream, so if I'm swimming upstream, I'm going to be going backwards. There's no doubt about it, the way I swim now. And so I'm going to be looking, and I'm going to be seeing people that are walking on the side of the river heading upstream, and they're going to be passing me by all the time, and I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be like, what's going on? I don't understand that I'm in the water and I need to get out of the water because I'm not going with the flow, or I've got the wrong goal, actually, would be another aspect of that, right?
So yeah, I mean, like you said, you're struggling, right? And so you get tired, you get frustrated, you get upset, you're not making progress, you're not getting where you want to go, and that's because you're fighting everything. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place to fight, right? There's always a time and place for everything. And in business, sometimes you do want to fight for those, you want to struggle for certain things. And at the same time, it's you want to go with the flow and see what's the easiest thing. And here's an example. Okay. And so Scott, I've been in real estate investing since 2002. I've
Yeah.
bought properties all over the country. And one of the things that I've learned when I was starting out in this real estate industry was some of the gurus, right? Some of the teachers out there said, you shouldn't go and you shouldn't buy properties outside of 30 minutes of where you live, right?
Okay, I can see that being a rule.
And so why is that a rule? Why did they teach that? Because typically you're familiar with an area 30 minutes around where you are, right?
Yeah.
It's close enough where you go to and look at and touch and feel and do everything. And people are typically more comfortable within that area because they're familiar with it, right?
Right.
Now
You're more relaxed.
You're more relaxed. Now here's the challenge, right? So if you want to get in the fix and flip business, right, and you're just starting out and you live in an area like Manhattan or you live in Los Angeles or Seattle, the average price of a house is $750 to $1 million. Okay?
Right.
And if you're brand new, is that the best place for you to be risking all of your money on a $1 million rehab? Because if one thing goes wrong, guess what happens?
You lose your money.
You're done, right? And so is rehabbing a $1 million house for your very first deal the best thing because that's where you live and it's within 30 minutes of your area? And the answer is no, right? I mean,
Right.
You can do a rehab anywhere in the country as long as you have a good team and you know what you're doing. And, part of the team might include a coach. Part of the
Right.
team includes, people on the ground, right? Boots on the ground is what we call it.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to do real estate in multiple different states because I had team members in different areas running those projects for me. Only it's a lot easier for me to do a rehab in, let's just say, North Carolina or, somewhere where the properties are, 150,000 or, versus $1 million. So
if you've
it's
got $850,000 at risk, one way, and you could say, well, $850,000 is an awful lot of flights from Seattle to North Carolina at $100 a pop, right? I think the amount of money you're going to have at risk for that deal will be a lot less.
Well, not only that, you think about it too. You're brand new, and the first thing you got to do is come up with $1 million. How difficult is it for you to come up with $1 million if you've never raised money before versus learning how to raise money and coming up with $150,000, right? I mean, that's a level of difficulty that you're fighting against when you're brand new. Okay. And then you put yourself at more risk. You put yourself at more danger of losing things. Now, yes, there is a phrase out there that says no risk, no goodies. And the bigger the risk, the bigger the gains sometimes, right? And sometimes the bigger the risk, the bigger the risk, right? So, when I teach real estate, I always say, what is your strategy? What strategy do you want to implement for your business? And, if it's rehabbing, it's where's the next question then is, what market is the best place for that strategy? Like, I don't look at, just 30 minutes from where I live. I look at nationwide as my playground. The United States is my backyard. And so where in the United States, what city, what area, what, part of the country is the best place for me to implement my strategy that would give me the greatest return for the least amount of work and the least amount of risk. Okay.
So what you're saying is as the salmon going upstream, you're going upstream, you're heading towards the $1 million house. You're not making very much progress. But if you turned around and went downstream, you could get that $150,000 house and be making a lot of progress a lot easier.
Absolutely. And here's another example. Like if you're in those areas that I mentioned, and let's just say you find a house that's, even 500,000, half of that, right? You can do a rehab, and on a $500,000 property, chances there's a good chance you're going to make probably $50,000 to $75,000 in profit if you're doing it correctly. Okay,
Right.
so you're risking 500, and you're going to make, let's just say 50 for easy math. Okay,
10%.
well, I can go to Indiana or Ohio, okay, and I could do 4 or 5, even 5 properties that are worth $100,000 each. And on each of those properties, my average profit will be about 15 to 20,000. Okay, so now I'm risking the same amount as you. You're risking $500,000, and you're going to make 50, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to risk the same 500 on 5 different properties, and my average profit is going to be twice as yours because I'm going to make about 20 grand profit on each one of those. And if I screw up on one of them, right, because I
You're not
screwed
out of
something up,
business.
I'm not out of business, and I'm still making more money than you are. And so again, going with the flow, finding the right markets for what my strategy is, and not resisting the challenges that are ahead of me, only finding the best path for me to go down is going to make me a lot more successful, a lot easier, right?
So what we're really talking about is you're going to come up with situations in your business life, in your personal life, where you come up against a wall, and your choice is to continue banging your head against the wall, or to turn around and walk over a couple feet, find the door, open the door, and walk through. And so often we're myopic, right? We're so focused on what we're doing that we don't realize that there's a wall in front of us. It's brick. Our head is bleeding, and like 3 feet over is a door, whatever the solution is. And you reminded me of a story from my grocery manager days decades ago that I just feel like I need to share it. And I lived quite close to the store, but I never went to the store when I wasn't working. I just let the people do their job. But one day, for some reason, one night, I walked by and I thought, I'll just stop in and see the guys. And I stopped in, and the assistant manager came up to me and he said, Scott, he says, you've got to do something about, I'll just call him George. And I said, why? He's just been in a state all day. We don't know what to do. All night, we don't know what to do with him. It was like 8 o'clock at night. So I went, grabbed him, went into a corner where we had some privacy, and I said, what's up? And all summer, so this is the fall, all summer he'd been dating this gal. Now he's East Indian and Hindu, I think. We'll just say he's Hindu. She's white and Catholic. All right. And we're 500 miles up the coast of British Columbia in a small town of 13,000 people. And she has decided to go to university. So it's September. She has gone down to the university 500 miles away. And they were in love and everything was great. But then she said, you know what? I'm here. We're far apart. I think we should break up. So she broke up with him, and he was heartbroken, right? And this was just eating him apart. So I said to him, okay, well, like, you're Hindu, right? And he goes, yeah. Are you ever going to become Catholic? No, that'll never happen. Okay, well, so she's Catholic, right? Yeah. Is she ever going to become Hindu? No, that'll never happen. So what you're saying is this relationship will never happen. I mean, never happen long term. And you're upset because she broke up with you first. He was like, he just looked at me. And I said, listen, you're a handsome guy. He was like 18, 19, 20, 21 in there. And he was, the East Indians, they've got the feature. Like, he was like the handsomest guy in town.
Those Asians, man.
Yeah, those Asians. That's right. If you were there, you would have been the second handsomest guy there. And well, because he was at that high level, right? So I said, listen, I said, you're a really good looking guy. You're a pleasant fellow to be with. Give it a couple weeks. You're going to have girls coming after you like crazy once they know that you're available. And he goes, and this is a 13,000 person town, right? And he goes, oh, okay. And I left. I come back the next day. Everybody rushes up to me. What did you say to him? I go, what do you mean? He was happy, singing, and he was flying and getting his work done twice as fast as he normally did. And they called me Dr. Ruth for about 6 months. And sure enough, in 2 weeks, he had another gal on his arm that was cute, and he was happy as happy could be. But and the reason I tell the story is that we can't always see what's going on. We can't always see that we're in the river going upstream, but the person on the bank can see it, right? Like a coach or a mentor, right? As you had mentioned. And so they see what's going on, and we're working and we're working and we're working. We have no clue what to do. And there's no one who can help us as far as, I mean, this is how I think anyway. Like, I'm in this problem. It doesn't matter what I do. Nobody can come up with a solution. And then I casually mention, say to you, and you say, oh, well, did you think about this and that and the other thing? And I go, oh. And all of a sudden I'm turned around and I'm going the right direction, and things become easy and better and on all the rest of it.
So that's funny you bring that up. That, you know, one of my favorite quotes is from one of the best speakers in the entire world. His name's Les Brown. Gotten the honor of meeting him and hanging out with him a little bit. And he always says that you can't see the picture from inside the frame, right?
Right.
So that's his quote. You can't see the picture from it. And that's a good writer downer too. If you're taking notes, that's a good thing to write it down, is that you can't see the picture from inside the frame. By Les Brown. And you know, it's funny, that sticks to me, because when I first started real estate, I had a challenge. I had an issue that I got stuck, you know, and we talked about being stuck in a prior lesson. Only I was stuck in my business and I didn't know what to do. And I paid a lot of money, 5 figures. I had to call my credit cards, and this was back in the day when you could do that. I called my credit cards and asked for credit limits increases on 4 different cards, just to hire somebody to help me out. And the reason that this triggers for me is because I just talked to somebody earlier this week that had the same issue that I had 20 years ago.
Wow.
Now they didn't have to pay me as much as I paid that other guy. Only, you know, basically what it was I was in my real estate business, and I had multiple properties. I had multiple properties in different states. And I was out of money. I was out of cash. This is before I met our friend Jay Connor, who teaches private money. And, you know, I didn't know anything about private money. I just knew, you know, you go to the banks to get loans, and I was maxed out. I had over 10 properties. I had multiple different loans, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to purchase any more properties at that time. And I was sitting down, and I paid this guy a bunch of money. I sat down with him for my consultation. And at the time, my wife was there with me. And so we were both telling him about our business and what was going on and what our plans were and what our strategy was. And about 15 minutes into the conversation, he just looked at us. And, you know, the first words out of his mouth were, "You guys are idiots." And I'm like, huh? You know,
That's good coaching. That's good coaching. I just paid you all this money and you tell me I'm an idiot?
Yeah, I'm like, you know, that was a very expensive insult that you just gave me. Only what it was that he was asking me some questions, which was, you know, do you have equity in some of these properties you have? And, you know, I sat there and I thought about it, and I had, you know, 20 grand over here. I had 30 grand over here. I had 50 grand on this one. I had 60 grand here. So I had a ton of equity, and I was in a position in real estate where we call equity rich, cash poor, right? I had a ton of equity and I had very little cash. And, you know, he said, well, why don't you take one of those properties, sell it, and then you could buy 2 more. Right? And I looked at him and I said, that makes sense. Only it's not my strategy. It's not my plan, right? I was taught that you put together a plan, right? You have the strategy and you follow the strategy. And that's what I was doing. So I picked up all these properties and I was, you know, holding these properties as part of my strategy, part of my plan. And it didn't occur to me that, well, I can change it, right? I could move things around. I could do different things. It was because, you know, I was trained as an engineer, and you know, you're very structured, and you have your, you know, your plans and your strategies. And so I was executing my plan.
So you were running up against that brick wall we talked about earlier, and not realizing that it was okay to continue with your plan, but move over 2 feet to where there was a door.
Well, exactly. I was doing what I was taught. And, you know, fortunately, I had hired somebody that, as you said, was outside of the picture, right? That could
Right.
just look on and see what was going on and just smack me upside the head and say, you're an idiot. Because that's what it took to to like go, oh, you're right. This is silly. Why am I doing this? Like,
Right.
I'm fighting against things, right? I'm struggling and I don't know what to do when I could have just done this. And because of that one piece of advice, in the next 6 months, my business doubled, right? So it
Wow.
was just following that one simple strategy of, when I have enough equity in one property, I can, distribute it and multiply and continue to grow. It doubled my business in the next 6 months.
So,
And
Chaffee, you bring up a really interesting point here, because one of the problems that a lot of people have is they have a coach, and the coach gives them, or they have a teacher. We'll just say a teacher in this particular case. And the teacher says step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And most people don't follow the steps, and that's why they don't succeed. In your case, you were following the steps and then you got out of the flow, we'll just say, right? Because
yeah,
there was something there that was different in your particular situation than what the teacher was teaching. And so there's this kind of this balance, because most of the time people like us talk about how nobody does what we tell them to do, and so they don't have success. But here you're saying, I was doing what a successful teacher was telling me to do, and I was stuck, which is different than not having success too, by the way. I want to point that out. And because you weren't facing bankruptcy and collapse or anything else, you were just sort of stuck and you weren't able to get to the next level. And then you were able to talk to somebody else, figure out where your bottleneck was, and then move forward. And and I think that's it's a very difficult line, right? Like, where do you stop following what your teacher is saying and start doing something a little bit different? Or when do you move to a new teacher? And my son is an amazing saxophone player. And when he was a teenager, he came home and he said, my saxophone teacher won't teach me anymore. And I'm like, what did you do? Right? What did you insult her? Did you step on her saxophone? Like, what happened? And he was like, no, she just said that she taught me everything she could teach me. She said she'd play with me, but she won't teach me anymore. And I go, oh. And then he said, yeah. And the only person in the city that can teach me more isn't taking any new students on. I go, oh, that's too bad. And but she's going to talk to him. So a week later, he comes back and he says, I have a new teacher, because she talked to this teacher. She had reached the level of, so she was very self-aware, I think. She'd reached the level of her ability to teach her student. And then she said, okay, we're done. You've graduated. You want to get better and you want to do more. This is the person that you need to move to. And I think that that's part of learning that we don't really talk about, right? Like, you take what somebody's learned and you either go to the moon with it and you're done, or you get to a certain level with it and you say, well, I need more. Do they have a higher level of training? Do they have more that they can give you? Or do they say, well, that's it. You've taken level 1, level 2, level 3. There's no level 4, sorry. In which case, you could ask the teacher, well, what would be my next step? Because I want to get this, and that. And if they're aware and they know the answer, they'll tell you, of course. If they don't know the answer, they won't.
So there's two things that you brought up that I do want to address, Scott. And I do want to shout out to Paul, who said, hey. So, hey, Paul, good seeing you too. And so the two things, though, that I do want to bring up was that when in my situation, I was doing what I was taught, and I didn't have a coach at the time, so I was just following the lesson plans, right? So I had attended a boot camp, I had attended a training, and there were certain steps to follow, and I was following those steps, only I didn't have a coach or a mentor. And that's why I had to spend the extra money to hire the coach or a mentor. And so,
Right.
Following a flow, right? Following a plan, a system, I think is critical for your success, because you're following a proven structure that works, that can help accelerate you. And that's key.
Right.
And I didn't have that second piece. That's what I had to pay for him to smack me upside the head, which is, having a coach or a mentor that can see what you're doing and implement and make tweaks based upon your own individual situation. And so that's what he was able to do for me, right?
Oh, cool.
So that's the first thing, is that you do need both pieces of that. The second thing is that I agree with you. There are times that you should look for a new coach or a new mentor or teacher, only you also have to be careful of moving too fast for your own good. Okay.
Right.
And so I've coached students where they want to do more, they want to achieve more and accomplish more, only it's like they want to run before they even walk. And sometimes you have to walk and you have to build a foundation and a base before you can run. Otherwise, you're going to trip and fall and really hurt yourself down the road. And people don't realize that. And so both of those situations where you're looking for a new coach because, you know, you've reached a peak and you need a new coach, and or you're looking for somebody and you shouldn't be looking for somebody, really boils down to how aware is the coach or mentor that you're working with, and are they asking you the right questions to make sure that you're on the right track. And I think that's a key trait of a good coach or a mentor, is that they ask you a lot of questions and they direct you in a certain way, because a lot of times, you know, with coaching and teaching, and you know, Scott, even as a manager, you don't know what's going on with the other person unless they tell you. And sometimes they don't tell you unless you ask them. And sometimes they don't know what to answer or tell you because they don't know what they don't know.
Right. And they may not even know what's going on with them to be able to, they won't be able to volunteer the information because you haven't asked the question to have them shine a light on that part of their being to be able to then say, oh yeah, well, this is what's going on. I didn't realize it was affecting my work or whatever. And I think the danger of, like, there's a real danger of, you, like you said, of trying to run before you can walk, or I'm going to take these 3 things that Chaffee said and those 4 things that Scott said, I'm going to put them all together, and then why didn't they work? Well, they're kind of like not supposed to work, and they're kind of at odds, right? Because I do it this way and you do it that way. There's no right or wrong. But if you try to take step 1 and 3 of your system and 2 or 4 of mine and put them together, you're going to have a mess. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
They run to, like, I see it in the real estate training world where, you know, I work with a number of people creating content with them, and I'll see the same persons at all the different people's live streams or, you know, their webinars. And I'm like, well, you know, that's kind of that can be a dangerous thing, because you'll take a bunch of different things and they don't work together because you're not a system. It's like if you take half of a boat and half of a van and you try to put them together to have something that runs on land and water, you're going to have something that doesn't run on either.
Absolutely. And if you're following, and I always say this, the same thing, Scott, which is if you're following a system, one, it's a system because it's been proven to work, right? Somebody's put together a system that based upon their experience and their results, and they want to share that with you. And so first and foremost, if you're going to do that system, do the system. Because if you're halfway into the system and you say, you know what, I could do this better, and then you start changing the system, well, it's not a system anymore, right? It's a Franken system, right? And the key point about that Franken system that you change because you think you can do it better, which maybe you can, maybe, and we don't know. Only the key point, though, is that it's no longer proven, right? The system that you purchased, the system that you followed, the system that you started using has been proven to work. And so get it to work, make some money, and then after you've made money and gotten it to work, then do tweaks to it however you feel comfortable, because you know that if your tweaks fail and they don't work, you can always go back to what does work. Right. So following that system is key.
One of our good friends, you mentioned him already, and he did a shout out to us, Jay Connor. He tells a really amazing story in that he wanted to learn this real estate investing thing. So he found a teacher, he found a mentor, he found a coach, same person or same organization. And he did all the work, the way that he was taught, the way that, you know, he was a very coachable student from what I can understand, and became very successful at it. And one of the things that his coach and mentor had in the system was automating things so that he's not out putting the bandit signs. He's not knocking.
All of a sudden they have all this time and they're like, what do I do now? And you'll find sometimes that when people don't adapt, right, when people don't go with the flow and look and explore new things, is that after they're retired, they quickly decline in health, right? And
Yeah.
they don't blossom as Jay blossomed because they don't do something which I've learned, which is what I call the 8th habit. And I actually don't call the 8th habit. It's actually a book called The 8th Habit by Stephen R. Covey. Stephen R. Covey also
are you stealing Stephen's
No, I
IP?
gave him credit. Come on. I'm giving him credit right here.
You are.
I call it the 8th habit because he called it the 8th habit, right? So that's why.
So what is the 8th habit?
Well, he wrote 7 habits before that, 7 habits of highly effective people. And I highly recommend you read that book because it does tell you 7 habits that you should follow. And then he wrote another book called The 8th Habit. And the 8th habit is find your voice and help others find theirs, right? And so that's key. 2 pieces of that, which is find your voice, which means find what you are passionate about. Find out what what speaks to you, right? What your voice is about, what your passion and what you love to do. Find out what that is, and then go out and help other people find their voice, right? Find out what they're passionate about. And if you can find out what you're passionate about and then find other people that have that similar passion and teach them how to be successful in that passion, that's when you start to really blossom, right? That's when you really start to explode. And that's what has happened with our friend Jay. And that's what, when I found coaching, that was my voice. And that's what I do now is I help other people succeed in their businesses and everything through the voice of coaching. And so, that is a very, very powerful habit that Stephen R. Covey wrote an entire book on. Whereas, he wrote 1 book on 7 habits. He spent 1 book on just this 1 habit. So
I think after he wrote the 7 habits of highly effective people, he realized he made a mistake and he should have written 7 books, 1 on each habit.
That's right.
But you bring up a really, really good point, Jaffe, and we're getting close to the end of our time, so I want to end my part with just this one other story. We're talking about business success, so we're hopefully talking to people that are driven, that they want to have a higher level of success than they have. But I think that part of success is not just the money, as we've been talking about now. It's how do you feel? Are you self-actualized and that sort of stuff. And when you were talking, you reminded me of a fellow who picked me up when my car was in a car accident, and so I had to go to the car rental place, and they sent a car to pick me up and take me. And the fellow was around 65, 70-ish in that age range. I guess 60, 65. And so he's driving and he's chatting, and I don't know if I had an attitude. I don't know if he filled the vibe from me. I don't know if he told everybody this, but he says, I'm retired. And I had a very, very good job. I think he said he was an engineer, but don't quote me. And, and he basically said in not so many words, I'm a successful guy. I don't have to work. And I retired a couple of years ago. Okay. And so and then in his mind, he's going, you're probably wondering why I'm driving this car. And he said, 2 weeks after I was retired, my wife's told me, you got to get a job and get out of the house. You're driving me crazy. So he did. And he went to this rent-a-car place, and the manager was 22 years old. So here's this 50-something, 60-something guy walking in, applying for a job with a 22-year-old boss, right? He didn't have a problem with it, but the 22-year-old is like, I'm not going to hire you, right? You're old. So anyway, but the 22-year-old was desperate for someone who could do whatever the tasks are that this guy could do, and it was certainly nothing that he couldn't do. So he reluctantly hired him. And after about a month, the 22-year-old manager comes up to him and says, "Do you have any friends who would like a part-time job?" And he laughed and he says, "Yeah, I got to know a few guys. I'll send them this way." "Oh, thank you so much." Why? Because if he needed to come, if the manager called him and said, "Listen, I'll call him George. Listen, George, we've got a bit of something going on. Can you come in 15 minutes early?" No problem. "George, I know it's the end of your shift. It's 6 o'clock, but Susie hasn't shown up. Can you stay 15 minutes long?" No problem. The shift starts at 9 o'clock. 10 to 9, he's there. This happens, that happens. The customers all love him, right? When he does the job, he does it right. He's not doing the job to make money to go get drunk on the weekend, which is what all the 22-year-olds are doing, right? And the 22-year-old manager realized it's like, wow, like this is a guy, he doesn't bitch and complain. He's happy to be here. He's not looking for another job. This isn't like a stepping stone sort of thing. And he realized the advantage of using that demographic as a target for employees, right? So the reason I bring that all up is that not everything is just about making the money as much as it, and of course what this guy got, like what the driver got, was he got a chance to chat and meet somebody new 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. And so his social needs were met. His financial needs were fine. His health needs were fine, but his social needs were not being met, because that's why he was bugging his wife all the time, right? And I think it's important to realize that we take a holistic approach, because there are lots of people who are very successful and they're drug addicts and they're drunk and they're miserable. And there's lots of people that are very successful and they're super happy. And it's the same with the poor people. So, but if we don't keep these in mind, then we're not really going to be having success from our business.
Absolutely. And I'll end then on with a follow-up to that, which is a Super Bowl commercial that came out a few years ago, where there was a taxi driver, right? He was driving a taxi.
Oh, cool. It fits right in.
And he was driving a taxi, and on the visor of the passenger side seat, there was a postcard of a tropical island. And the passenger in the taxi was like, "Oh, that's a nice postcard you got. Is that somewhere you're going to go visit?" And the taxi driver says, "No, I own that. I drive a taxi because I get bored." And it was an E-Trade. It was a trading commercial, right? Oh. So the guy had done a bunch of trades, made millions of dollars, bought a private island. Only it was a private island, so no one was there. He got bored, so he was driving a taxi around, right? So, nice. Goes to your point is that it's not always about the money. And don't get me wrong, having a lot of money is great, and I'd rather be rich than poor, right? Yeah. Being rich and wealthy allows you to do the things that some people are not able to do. And one of those is really just enjoy your life and do other opportunities that you would not otherwise have the opportunity to do. So, right. As you said, though, that goes in line with this topic is really find out what the path for you is, and follow the path that works for you, and quit fighting everything, right? You fight when you need to fight, and the rest of the time, just let it go with the flow, and do what you need to do to succeed.
Right. And yeah. I would add that make sure that you've got a coach, a mentor, a system that you want to follow, and that those people will help you. They'll tell you, "Hey, you're banging your head against the wall here, and just do this or do that." And you'll be well on your way to success. So awesome. Good job, Chaffee, as usual. So if somebody wanted to go with the flow and they needed some help because they're swimming upstream and they're not getting anywhere, how can they get a hold of you?
Just go to my website, www.keyconceptcoaching.com. Check everything out. There's an opt-in page there. You can go to keyconceptcoaching.com/schedule. And schedule a time, and we can have a conversation. Love to talk to you and see what you're up to, and see if we're a fit to work together.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Make sure that you like, subscribe, hit the bell, whatever it is, wherever you are. Leave a comment. We appreciate them. It helps us keep going. Gives us some little emotional dopamine, I guess it is.
That's right.
And head over to keyconceptscoaching.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.